Going to follow up with the president of the university. I will be very receptive to his suggestions. I will let him know some of the things we do at some of our other universities, which range from educational exchange programs where Ethiopians go to the United States, to bringing U.S. professors to stay for a year at an Ethiopian university to exchange research and and so there's a range of things that we do. We don't do a lot of them here, and I would like for us to do more. So that was agenda number one. Agenda number two, and I gave some remarks a short while ago. I very much value connecting with university students wherever I go. So I've done that recently in Mekelle, in Jimma, in Bahardar, in Gondar, and I hadn't yet done it, even though I've been here before. I had not been to the university before. So really what I like to do is to just interact some with students, give them a sense of my perspective, hear what their issues are, and when I do that, what I really try to emphasize is that I think university students have a unique opportunity and a unique responsibility. They are in these wonderful institutions of higher education that bring together people from all over Ethiopia, different regions, ethnicities, religions, genders. And it becomes a sort of a microcosm of Ethiopia. So it's a really wonderful opportunity, but it's also something that they need to be custodians of and take good care of and to take advantage of. Because what they can do is they can model the inclusive, mutually supported Ethiopia we all want to see in the future. So I like to have those conversations with students, and I just like to hear what they're thinking about the university and about their experiences. And the last thing I will say is that it's just very inspiring to be with young Ethiopians. What enormous capacity this country has, and its university students are one very clear indicator of that. So I always leave these visits inspired to make sure that the United States is supporting young Ethiopians and investing in their potential as fully as possible. Thank you.
Another question. There have been some conflict, ethnic-based conflict that have been going on around the area of the Somalis and Oromos. Is there any kind of plan that you are expected to do for peace building for these two ethnic?
Well, thank you very much. We absolutely confer with leaders at all levels, from federal, regional, sub-regional, to try to make sure we understand these dynamics. Our most important engagement is to address the humanitarian needs arising from the displacements, arising from the violence that these tensions can cause. And we are very committed to doing so. I think we are the largest donor in that area. Recently provided an additional $170 million a couple months ago, specifically to assist with humanitarian needs, food and sanitation for displaced people. But we're really concerned about the underlying causes, and I think this is ultimately an Ethiopian problem and something that only Ethiopians will understand fully, so we don't want to presume that we have answers. But we do have programs of conflict resolution administered by our USAID office that's very active in a number of the regions. That's one approach we can bring to help address some of the underlying causes, but we confer with the leaders to make sure that we're doing whatever they feel we can do in our public diplomacy and our private diplomacy to try to encourage unity and cohesion among Ethiopians, because we firmly believe that this is an extraordinary country, an extraordinary moment, and if people come together and support this moment and this reform opportunity, this will be an extraordinary country in the days ahead.
Last question. I do exactly remember about 8 to 10 years back, at that time I was learning at school, there was some US militaries, they pulled some library in the high school, when this Jiga town. And I have there are some questions that has been raised. The community of Jiga are looking for public library. I think so many lecturers, so many students have asked you, do you think American embassy or American country can provide for Jiga community to do for that such kind of infrastructure?
Right. Well, what we do for libraries, we don't build libraries, so we don't do large-scale infrastructure projects like that. What we do is provide English language materials to libraries, and sometimes we support programs at libraries, either workshops or exchanges or video conferences, that sort of thing. So that's an area where you're right, we're active elsewhere in Ethiopia, not terribly active here. So my public diplomacy colleagues who are with me on this trip are studying that and looking for what more we can do. So I hope we'll have good news in the days ahead. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for giving the chance. I think think you have been going to apology for those people who are migranted in around the Babili area, and they are just facing a lack of food, lack of water, a lack of school. If you had any idea to support those people.
I'm sorry, which people?
College people.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, we are very heavily involved in humanitarian work specifically for internally displaced people, primarily food, and also sanitation. We do small projects on education as well, as part of our larger, very big programs on education, primary education, more generally. We do, in the areas where we work, we do try to make sure that people who are displaced are not disadvantaged in terms of education for their children because of their displacements. So we are already really quite active in those areas. It's an area where we are committed to remaining active. We hope that we don't have to do more, because we hope that over time these displacements will resolve themselves. And this is also something that we interact very closely with regional and federal levels on, is laying the groundwork for voluntary, dignified returns, or permanent settlements if returns aren't an option. So we are very active in both the immediate humanitarian needs and in trying to be supportive of Ethiopian efforts to address the underlying causes. But as I said in response to the earlier question, we don't want to presume that we understand some of these ethnic dynamics as well as Ethiopians do. So we will always take our lead from Ethiopian officials and try to support them however we can.
You have one more question.
One question. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I have one general question. Small regions have been marginalized just for the previous administration, whether it's regional or it's federal. So for that reason, they didn't get the support that they need, the support that Somali region need. When we see in Ethiopia, the region is affected by the drought and also just by many problems. But the support they get from the federal, from the NGO, and also from just embassy is too low and just small. Most of the projects are shifted to other four big regions. Do you have any plan to change this and these steps, I mean this experience?
Yeah.
Do you have any plan to shift the big projects like the resilient project to this region, because since it is the most affected region? Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. I think I would maybe dispute the premise that the United States, anyway, has not already been quite active in the Somali region. I know that quantifying things isn't really the best way to do that, but we do spend about $150 million a year in Somali. But I take your point, and I think it's an important one, because too much of the money that we're spending in the Somali region is on humanitarian assistance. And that's important. You have to meet the immediate needs of people. But that doesn't fix the problem, So one of the reasons we're here, and one of the reasons we had such good conversations with President Mustafa, is because we need to understand this region's developmental priorities, and we need to look at ways that even our humanitarian engagement is building resilience and self-reliance. And we visited some of the sites yesterday that we're already supporting in that regard, that have an interesting mix of components. We provide free investments, essentially, into private sector organizations and individuals who have solutions to some of the humanitarian as well as some of the economic challenges the region faces. So yesterday, for example, we met with a number of people who, because of our investment, are even more successful as private sector entrepreneurs, creating jobs, creating economic activity, modeling successful business practices for other Somali Ethiopians to follow, at the same time meeting humanitarian needs. Specifically, the ones we saw yesterday focus on some of the needs of the pastoralist community for solar energy, for improved feed for their livestock, for better access to veterinary care for their sheep and goats. So this is the sort of thing we're doing, but the reason we're here and the reason that we want to make sure we understand the government's priorities is because we want to do more. And we want to make sure, whether it's our humanitarian assistance or development assistance, that we are building self-reliance and resilience among the people. And we're doing that, by the way, because we agree with your fundamental premise that the Somali region needs a leg up. It doesn't need a handout, but it needs support to be as successful as it can be. And that's really important to us as well. So thank you for your input, and we will do our best.